You walk into work and instantly adjust. Your voice becomes measured, your expression controlled, your energy carefully contained. Later with friends, another version appears, lighter but still calculated. At home with family, yet another mask settles onto your face, hiding what you truly feel. Each version is convincing, yet none of them are complete. You feel like an actor switching costumes depending on the stage. Others see you as dependable, adaptable, or even successful. But deep inside you know the truth. Every mask hides the weight of self-betrayal. This constant shifting feels safe on the surface, but the cost is silent. With every performance, a piece of your authentic self retreats further into the shadows. Slowly, you begin to lose sight of who you really are when no one is watching. Living in fragments drains more than your energy. Every mask demands effort. Every role requires constant adjustment. The fatigue is not only physical but spiritual, a deep weariness that no amount of rest seems able to repair. You are tired of pretending, yet unable to stop. The emptiness follows closely behind. Moments that should bring joy feel hollow because the self experiencing them is only partial. Even achievements lose meaning when they belong to a version of you that does not feel entirely real. The applause echoes, but you remain unseen. Over time, the cycle creates a quiet despair. You keep showing up as the person others expect, while your true self waits in silence. The longer the divide continues, the heavier the emptiness becomes, pressing against you like an invisible weight that never lifts. This video is not only about naming the struggle, but also about guiding you back to yourself. Jung believed that masks may protect us for a time, but true freedom comes when the fragments reunite. Wholeness begins the moment you stop hiding from your own depth. You will learn why fragmentation happens, how to recognize the signs that you are living split lives, and most importantly, the steps to reintegration. With awareness, acceptance, expression, and integration, the masks lose their power, and your authentic self begins to breathe again. By the end, you will see that you are not destined to live in pieces. The exhaustion you feel has a remedy, and the emptiness can be replaced with presence. Wholeness is not only possible, it is the life you were meant to live. Carl Jung described the persona as the mask we wear to meet the expectations of society. It is not inherently false. It is the role that allows us to function in the world. Yet when the persona takes over, it begins to replace the authentic self with performance. Jung warned that the danger lies in identifying too strongly with these masks. A person may become so accustomed to showing only acceptable traits that they forget the fullness of who they are. The mask then becomes a prison, cutting them off from their inner truth. The persona is useful as long as it remains flexible, but when it hardens into identity, fragmentation begins. Instead of one whole self, many partial selves appear. Each mask hides parts of the psyche, leaving the individual divided and secretly exhausted. For those who feel and perceive more deeply, fragmentation often begins as a form of protection. Their intensity unsettles others, so they learn to soften it. To avoid rejection, they create versions of themselves that are easier to accept, leaving the authentic core hidden. This adaptation feels necessary. At work, they suppress emotional insight to appear professional. With friends, they avoid serious truths to maintain light conversation. In family settings, they silence their depth to keep the peace. Each environment demands a mask, and soon the masks multiply. Over time, the authentic self grows quieter. Sensitive people convince themselves that their true feelings are too much, too heavy, or too inconvenient. Fragmentation becomes survival, but it also creates distance from their essence. What once protected them slowly begins to suffocate them. When the authentic self is denied, the psyche suffers. Jung observed that what we repress does not disappear. It waits in the unconscious, pressing for recognition. Every time you silence your real feelings, a tension builds inside, creating symptoms that no mask can fully hide. The cost often shows up as anxiety, depression, or chronic fatigue. These conditions are not simply medical problems, but expressions of the soul's exhaustion. Living as fragments demands constant performance, and the true self, unexpressed, grows restless and heavy. Relationships also weaken under this strain. People sense when someone is not fully present, even if they cannot explain why. Trust becomes fragile, intimacy feels distant, and life itself begins to feel unreal. Denying authenticity slowly erodes both inner stability and outer connection. At work, you may become the efficient, composed professional who hides sensitivity behind discipline. Around family, you soften or restrain yourself to avoid conflict, shaping your words to keep harmony. With friends, you adopt yet another role, lighthearted but carefully filtered. Each setting seems to demand a new version of you. While others may shift slightly between environments, for highly perceptive people, the difference feels extreme. It is not adaptation, but fragmentation, a splitting into roles that never fully reflect the person beneath them. Over time, these versions compete. You catch yourself wondering which one is real, or whether the true you exists at all. The constant transitions feel less like flexibility and more like acting, leaving you unsure of where performance ends and authenticity begins. Living as fragments often feels like performing on an endless stage. Every word, every gesture, every silence is calculated to avoid standing out. You measure yourself carefully, worried that showing your full intensity will make others uncomfortable or drive them away. This fear becomes a silent script. You laugh when expected, agree when it is safer, and shrink back when your insights feel heavier than the room can handle. The act is convincing, yet behind it lives the constant anxiety of being judged as too much. What others see as adaptability feels to you like betrayal. Every time you dim your light, you confirm the hidden belief that your authentic self is unacceptable. The performance may win approval, but it costs you the very connection and freedom you long for. Fragmentation drains the body as much as the mind. Carrying multiple versions of yourself requires constant vigilance, as if you are juggling masks without ever letting one slip. The strain builds silently, and soon you feel exhausted even after sleep or rest. Anxiety creeps in without obvious cause. You walk into social situations with a quiet dread, not because of danger, but because you know you must perform again. The nervous system stays on alert, anticipating the need to edit, filter, and conceal your authentic responses. This cycle creates symptoms doctors cannot easily explain. Fatigue, tension, or unease emerge without clear medical reason. Jung understood these as signals from the psyche. They are the body's way of saying the division inside has become unbearable, and reintegration is urgently needed. As the masks multiply, a quiet alienation begins. You catch your reflection and wonder who is looking back. The words you speak sound familiar yet hollow, as though they belong to someone you created rather than to your true self. This disconnection grows over time. You forget what you genuinely enjoy, what you truly feel, or what you honestly believe. Choices become guided by the demands of each role instead of the desires of your core, leaving you with a life that feels borrowed. Jung described this as the tragedy of living beside oneself. You remain present in the world, but absent from your own essence. The deeper this split becomes, the more you experience the unsettling sense that you are a stranger inhabiting your own life. When you live divided between masks, authenticity slowly erodes. You begin to measure your words against what others expect rather than what you truly feel. Over time, honesty feels dangerous, and silence becomes safer than risking rejection for showing your real self. This loss is subtle but devastating. Without authenticity, joy feels muted and achievements ring hollow. Relationships remain shallow because no one is meeting the real you. Even solitude brings little comfort, as the question lingers, have I forgotten how to be myself? Jung believed authenticity is the foundation of psychological health. Without it, the soul suffocates under performance. To lose authenticity is not simply to hide. It is to abandon the very source of vitality and meaning that makes life worth living. When you hide behind masks, relationships lose their depth. Others may enjoy your company, yet they never truly meet you. They connect with the role you perform, not with your authentic essence. This creates a distance that no amount of conversation can bridge. Over time, you may feel unseen even in close relationships. Partners, friends, or family might say they know you, but inside you recognize that they only know fragments. Intimacy becomes strained, because true closeness requires vulnerability, and vulnerability cannot exist through a mask. This disconnection breeds loneliness. Surrounded by people, you still feel isolated, because no one is relating to your real self. Jung warned that when authenticity is sacrificed for acceptance, relationships become hollow mirrors, reflecting only what is safe, never what is true. Fragmentation does not only affect emotions, it stifles the spirit. When the authentic self is buried beneath layers of performance, the soul loses its natural expression. Life begins to feel mechanical, a series of roles acted out rather than a living experience of meaning. The suffocation shows up as restlessness, emptiness, and a deep hunger for something real. Even in moments of success, the spirit feels starved because what is being celebrated is a mask, not the truth. The applause never reaches the part of you that longs to be seen. Jung described this as spiritual crisis. The inner world demands expression, yet the outer life denies it. The longer this continues, the more intense the tension becomes, until the psyche begins to rebel through symptoms, dreams, or sudden urges to break free from pretense. Depression often takes root when the soul feels abandoned by the self. Each time you silence your truth or hide behind a mask, a small betrayal occurs. Over time, these betrayals gather like stones, weighing you down until your inner world feels heavy and lifeless. This kind of depression does not always come from external loss. It comes from the internal fracture of living against your nature. The constant denial of your feelings and desires creates grief for the life unlived, the self unseen, and the authenticity never allowed to breathe. Jung recognized this sorrow as a signal rather than a defect. Depression in this sense is not weakness but a message. It points to the places where you have abandoned yourself and invites you to begin the difficult but necessary work of reintegration and healing. The first step toward reintegration is awareness. Begin by noticing the moments when you shift into roles. At work, do you become more rigid? With family, do you silence your opinions? With friends, do you laugh when you are not amused? Each of these reveals a mask. Awareness requires honesty without judgment. Masks develop as survival tools, often long before you realized it. Rather than condemning yourself for wearing them, observe with curiosity. Ask, what purpose does this mask serve, and what part of me is it trying to protect? As you become conscious of your masks, patterns emerge. You will see which roles dominate and which situations trigger them. This recognition weakens their control, because what is seen clearly can no longer operate unconsciously. Awareness opens the door to reclaiming your authentic self. Once you recognize the masks, the next step is to accept what lies beneath them. Often, hidden behind the performance are emotions you judged as unsafe: anger, sadness, longing, or intensity. Acceptance means letting these feelings exist without labeling them as wrong. Instead of pushing them back into silence, allow them to rise gently into awareness. Sit with the discomfort, breathe through it, and remind yourself that feeling deeply is not a flaw. These emotions are signals from your authentic self, asking to be acknowledged. Acceptance does not mean broadcasting every raw feeling. It means being honest with yourself. By giving space to your true emotions, you begin to rebuild trust with your inner world. What was once buried in shadow becomes a living part of your wholeness again. After awareness and acceptance, the next step is expression. Begin in places where it feels safe to be honest: a trusted friend, a journal, or creative work. Speaking or writing what is true gives your inner self a voice and releases the tension of silence. Authentic expression does not need to be dramatic. It can be as simple as admitting when you are tired, sharing when you are hurt, or expressing joy without restraint. These small acts signal to your psyche that it is no longer being hidden or denied. The more you practice authenticity in safe spaces, the stronger your confidence grows. Gradually, the fear of rejection weakens. Each moment of truth, no matter how small, begins to stitch together the fragments, moving you closer to a life where performance is no longer necessary. Integration begins when the parts of you that once lived separately are welcomed back into a single self. Instead of dividing your professional, social, and private faces, you allow their truths to merge. Each fragment carries wisdom, and together they form the wholeness you long for. This process does not mean abandoning all adaptation. It means living from a consistent core, so that no matter where you are, you remain recognizably yourself. The masks may still appear when needed, but they no longer replace or silence the authentic self beneath them. Jung called this movement individuation, the path of becoming whole. As fragments reunite, fatigue lifts, anxiety softens, and life feels more coherent. The scattered voices inside become one steady presence, guiding you with clarity. Integration is the return home to who you truly are. Journaling creates a mirror for your inner world. By writing down daily experiences, you begin to notice when you are acting from a mask and when you are authentic. Patterns quickly emerge, showing which roles dominate and which environments trigger them most often. A simple practice is to divide your entries into two parts. In one section, record moments when you felt disconnected or performative. In the other, write about times when you felt alive, genuine, and fully present. Over time, this contrast reveals the cost of fragmentation. The act of writing also strengthens awareness. Each sentence anchors your reflections, turning vague impressions into visible evidence. As you track your masks and your moments of truth, you build the clarity needed to choose authenticity more often and reclaim the self you had hidden. Sometimes you cannot see your own masks clearly because they have been in place for years. A therapist, coach, or guide serves as a mirror, reflecting patterns you overlook. They help uncover the hidden parts of yourself that long for expression and integration. Shadow work in particular shines light on the aspects you deny or suppress. By exploring dreams, projections, and emotional triggers, you begin to recognize the self you have pushed into silence. Bringing these parts into awareness weakens the grip of the masks you wear. Supportive guidance provides accountability and safety. With a trusted mirror, you can risk showing vulnerability without fear of rejection. This external perspective helps you reconnect with the whole self, making the journey of reintegration less overwhelming and far more sustainable. Creativity gives voice to what cannot yet be spoken. Painting, writing, music, or movement allow hidden aspects of the self to emerge in symbolic form. These outlets bypass the need for explanation, letting suppressed emotions flow safely into color, rhythm, or story. When you create without judgment, you open a channel where authenticity can surface. The part of you that felt silenced in daily life finds expression in art. Even if no one else sees it, the act itself restores vitality, reminding you that your essence is still alive. Over time, creative expression becomes a practice of liberation. Each drawing, poem, or melody releases fragments held in shadow, slowly stitching them back into wholeness. Creativity does not only produce beauty, it rebuilds connection with the self that was hidden behind the masks. Mindfulness helps you pause the endless switching of roles. By focusing on breath, body, or present sensation, you return to the steady ground beneath all masks. This awareness creates space where your authentic self can be felt without interference from external expectations. Solitude deepens this process. In silence, there's no need to perform, no audience to satisfy. Here you begin to hear the quiet voice of your true self, often drowned out in daily life. The longer you spend in solitude, the clearer this voice becomes. Combining mindfulness with solitude turns inward listening into a practice. Whether through meditation, slow walks, or simply sitting in stillness, you create room for reintegration. In this space, the fragments soften, and the self hidden by masks begins to emerge whole once again. When reintegration begins, life takes on a new texture. You no longer enter rooms calculating which mask to wear. Instead, you bring the same core self into every space. Authenticity does not mean exposing everything at once, but it does mean living without constant pretense. This shift lightens your energy. Without the drain of performance, presence becomes natural. People respond differently as well. They sense the steadiness in you, the alignment between words and essence, and they feel safer because you are no longer playing a role. Living authentically restores joy. Achievements feel real, conversations carry depth, and solitude no longer echoes with emptiness. By shedding masks, you step into a life where your inner and outer worlds finally match, bringing both peace and vitality to your daily existence. When you live authentically, relationships transform. The people who value only your masks naturally fade away, while those who appreciate your depth draw closer. This shift may reduce the number of connections you have, but the quality becomes richer and far more sustaining. True intimacy grows only when your real self is present. By showing vulnerability, you invite others to do the same. Trust deepens because there is no performance to maintain, only honesty. These relationships honor your wholeness and give space for both light and shadow. Over time, such connections create a circle of belonging. Instead of feeling drained or unseen, you feel nourished and recognized. The more you build bonds that welcome your authenticity, the less need there is for masks, and the stronger your sense of freedom becomes. Purpose reveals itself most clearly when you live as one whole self. As long as you are divided between masks, your energy is scattered and direction feels uncertain. But when the fragments reunite, clarity emerges. You begin to see the work and path that truly belong to you. Wholeness allows you to align actions with inner truth. Instead of chasing goals that suit a persona, you pursue what resonates with your core. This shift brings a sense of meaning that performance can never provide, because it is rooted in authenticity rather than approval. Jung believed individuation was not only healing but also the doorway to purpose. The more complete you become, the more naturally you step into the role life has prepared for you. From wholeness, your purpose is not something to find, but something to live. No matter how long you have lived behind masks, reintegration is always possible. The authentic self is never destroyed, only hidden. Beneath the roles and performances, your true nature waits patiently, ready to return the moment you create space for it to emerge. Jung taught that the psyche has an innate drive toward wholeness. This means that even when you feel most divided, there is a force within you working to reunite what has been split. The very discomfort you feel is evidence that reintegration is already calling you. You are not condemned to live in fragments. With awareness, acceptance, expression, and integration, you can reclaim the parts of yourself you thought were lost. Each step brings you closer to a life where you are no longer acting, but finally living as yourself. Your journey matters, and your story can help others. Take a moment to reflect on the masks you recognize in your own life. Do you become a different person at work, with family, or among friends? Share your experience in the comments so others can see they are not alone. When you speak openly about the roles you have worn, you give permission for others to do the same. What feels like personal struggle often echoes in countless lives. By naming your masks, you begin releasing their hold, while also creating connection with those who understand. This community grows stronger through honesty. Every comment becomes a reminder that fragmentation is a shared challenge, not a private flaw. Together, by sharing and listening, we create a space where authenticity is welcomed, and the work of reintegration feels possible for everyone. Do not let this journey pause here. Reintegration is only one step on the path Jung described. The next step leads into the sacred wound, the deep pain that shapes your gift and becomes the source of your greatest power once understood. Subscribe now and turn on notifications so you do not miss it. Each video builds upon the last, giving you tools to navigate the depth of your perception and live authentically. Without guidance, the wound can feel like a burden. With insight, it becomes transformation. This next chapter may be the most important yet. Your wound is not an accident. It is the place where light enters. Join the community now and prepare for the next deep dive into Jung's most powerful teaching. The moment to begin is now.